Jai Saparika Shri Guru Gaurachandra Jude Ki Jai. Jai Shri Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Pari Brajakacharya Astater Sita Shri Sriman Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Pari Brajakacharya Astater Sita Shri Sriman Srila Bhakti Rakak Sri Dardev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Welcome to Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mission Morning Class. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Chita Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitangstam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vidangscha Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Haribo. All right, continuing to read and worship Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is the 7th chapter of the Adi Lila first volume. Haribo. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
And Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Ki Jai. Srila Om Vishnupade Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Text number 28 of the 7th chapter. Jata jata prema vrishti kare panchajane tatta tatta badhe jala vyape tribhuvane. The more the 5 members of the Panchatattva cause the rains of love of Godhead to fall, the more the inundation increases and spreads all over the world. The Krishna consciousness movement is not a stereotyped or stagnant. It will spread all over the world, in spite of all objections by fools and rascals that European and American mlechas cannot be accepted as Brahmins or sannyasis. Here it is indicated that this process will spread and inundate the entire world with Krishna consciousness. The entire world, including everyone. Mayavadi karmanishta kutarkika gana Nindaka pasandi chatab paduya adama se shava mahadaksha danya palaila se vanyata sabare chunite narila. The impersonalists, fruitive workers, false logicians, blasphemers, non-devotees, and lowest among the student community are very expert in avoiding the Krishna consciousness movement, and therefore the inundation of Krishna consciousness cannot touch them. So these are very much the disqualifications. The impersonalists, the fruitive workers, the false logicians, blasphemers, non-devotees, and lowest among the student community are very expert in avoiding the Krishna consciousness movement, and therefore the inundation of Krishna consciousness cannot touch them. So Krishna says in the Gita, Avajananti mamuta manushim tanumashvitam parambhavam ajananto mamabhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. Because fools, meaning persons even who are worshippers of different forms of the Lord. They don't realize that this human-like form of Krishna is the original. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, one can test the so-called incarnation of Godhead according to the standard criteria. To avoid being misled by an exhibition of mystic powers, it is best to examine the so-called incarnation of God in the light of the statements of the Shastras. So Srila Prabhupada is saying, Krishna showed his universal form, so any other incarnation of God can also be asked to do that. But best to understand through the Shastra when the Lord's incarnations come and what are their characteristics. Tahadeki Mahaprabhu Karena Chintana Jagatubaite Ami Karinu Jatana Keha Keha Edaila Pratigyahaila Banga Tasaba Dubaite Patiba Kichuranga. Seeing that the Mayavadis and others were fleeing, Lord Chaitanya thought, I want everyone to be immersed in this inundation of love of God, but some of them have escaped. Therefore I shall devise a trick to drown them also. Here's an important point. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to invent a way to capture the Mayavadis and others who did not take interest in the Krishna consciousness movement. This is a symptom of an acharya. An acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype, for he must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness may be spread. Sometimes jealous persons criticize the Krishna consciousness movement because it engages equally both boys and girls in distributing love of Godhead. Not knowing that boys and girls in countries like Europe and America mix very freely, these fools and rascals criticize the boys and girls in the Krishna consciousness movement for intermingling. Intermingling just means doing service together. But these rascals should consider that one cannot suddenly change a community's social customs. However, since both boys and girls are being trained to become preachers, those girls are not ordinary girls, but are as good as their brothers who are preaching Krishna consciousness. Therefore, to engage both boys and girls in fully transcendental activities is a policy intended to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Atabali mane kichukariya vichara, sannyasa ashram prabhu kaila angikara. Thus the Lord accepted the sannyas order of life after full consideration. So he thought the Mayavadis are not going to accept anything I have to say, so I have to take sannyas. And therefore, that was the purpose. The purpose is for preaching. He took sannyas in order to influence those who did not want to be influenced. But still, they had to offer respects to a sannyasi, and therefore they would listen to him. So these are some. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has explained the term Mayavadi as follows. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material conception of life. A Mayavadi is one who considers the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, to be made of Maya, and who also considers the abode of the Lord and the process of approaching him, devotional service, to also be Maya. The Mayavadis consider all the paraphernalia of devotional service to be Maya. Maya refers to material existence, which is characterized by the reactions of fruitive activities. Mayavadis consider devotional service to be among such fruitive activities. According to them, when Bhagavatas or devotees are purified by philosophical speculation, they will come to the real point of liberation. Those who speculate in this way regarding devotional service are called kutarkikas, or false logicians. And those who consider devotional service to be fruitive activity are called karmanishtas. So they're saying, if these devotees who are very sentimental and are actually worshipping Maya, if they start to philosophically speculate about this and that, then they can become liberated. So those persons are kutarkikas, or false logicians, and those who consider devotional service to be fruitive activity, or just ordinary activity, pious activity, are called karmanishtas. Those who criticize devotional service are called nindakas, or blasphemers. Similarly, non-devotees who consider devotional activities to be material are called pashandis, and scholars with a similar viewpoint are called adama paduyas. The kutarkikas, nindakas, pasandis, and adama paduyas all avoid the benefit of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement of developing love of God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt compassion for them, and it is for this reason that he decided to accept the sannyas order. For by seeing him as a sannyasi, they would naturally offer him respects. The sannyas order is still respected in India. Indeed, the very dress of a sannyasi still commands respect from the Indian people. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas to facilitate preaching his devotional cult, although otherwise he had no need to accept the fourth order of spiritual life. So that's the reason for Mahaprabhu's accepting sannyas. It wasn't for his benefit. It was for our benefit. Chabisha vatsara chila grihasta ashrame panchavingshati varshe kaila jati dharme. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained in householder life for 24 years, and on the verge of his 25th year, he accepted the sannyas order. Sannyasa kariya prabhu kaila akashana jateka pala nachila tarkika dikana. After accepting the sannyas order, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu attracted the attention of all those who had evaded him, beginning with the logicians, the jnanis. Paduya pasandi karmi nindakadi jata tara ashi prabhupaya haya avanata. Thus the students, infidels, fruitive workers, and critics all came to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Infidel means faithless. Aparada kshamaila dubila prema jale keba edaibe prabhuda prema mahajale. But Chaitanya excused them all, and they merged into the ocean of devotional service. For no one can escape the unique loving network of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Acharya must devise a means to bring all persons to devotional service. Therefore, although I'm a sannyasi, I sometimes take part in getting boys and girls married. Although in the history of sannyas, no sannyasi has personally taken part in marrying his disciple. But because that is necessary under the time and circumstance, he had to make all kinds of arrangements for us. He knew that we were, that generation, more so in this generation, were freely mixing between boys and girls. And so he immediately had to make sure that everyone would be nicely married and be engaged in grihastha life so that there wouldn't be sinfulness in their lives. Shamanishtarite Prabhu Kripa Avatar Shabanishtarite Kare Chaturiya Par. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in order to deliver the fallen souls. Therefore, he devised many methods to liberate them from the clutches of Maya. Purport: it is the concern of the Acharya to show mercy to the fallen souls, In this connection, Desha Kalapatra, the place, the time, and the objections should be taken into consideration. And Srila Prabhupada did that perfectly. He broke many ordinary rules and regulations which were very applicable within the ordered society of India. Is a very orderly society, and everyone is cared for and taken care of very well. But now, coming to the West, that orderliness, that orderly structure was not there. So Srila Prabhupada had to make many, many concessions and adjustments in order to bring the Western young people to the feet of Mahaprabhu. And he did that with full success and in a very dignified manner. Tabe nija bhakta kaila jatam lecha adi, shabe edaila matra kashira mayavadi. All were converted into devotees of Lord Chaitanya, even the mlechas and yavanas. Only the impersonalist followers of Shankaracharya evaded him. Shankaracharya is Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is the master of the mode of ignorance. So if he wants to bewilder people, he's really very good at it. And so we're warned not to read his commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. It doesn't make any sense. But it's absolutely imbued with the power of ignorance. So those persons who were followers of Shankaracharya, they had a very hard time breaking through that barrier. Sanyasya kariya prabhu kaila akarshana jateke palan yachila tarki kadigana. After accepting the sannyas order, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu attracted the attention of all those who had evaded him, beginning with the logicians, the jnanis. Paduya pasandi karmi nindakadi jata tara ashi prabhupaya haya avanata. Thus the students, infidels, fruitive workers, and critics all came to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. And so Mahaprabhu set that example. He took sannyas for them, judging the time, circumstance, and the persons around him. He devised a plan to give the highest good to everyone. Aparada kshamaila dubila prema jale keva edaibe prabhura prema mahajale. Lord Chaitanya excused them all, and they merged into the ocean of devotional service. Oh, did I go back a little bit? Oh, I did. How did I do that? All right. Vrindavana jaite prabhu rahila kashite mayavari ganatare glagila nindite. While Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was passing through Varanasi on his way to Vrindavan, the Mayavadi sannyasi philosophers blasphemed against him in many ways. While preaching Krishna consciousness with full vigor, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu faced many Mayavadi philosophers. Similarly, we are also facing opposing swamis, yogis, impersonalists, scientists, philosophers, and other mental speculators. And by the grace of Lord Krishna, we successfully defeat all of them without difficulty. Srila Prabhupada used to meet with all kinds of persons, religious leaders, professors, scientists, all kinds of people, and easily he could defeat them. Sannyasi haiya kare gayana nachana na kare vedanta pata kare shankirtana. The blasphemer said, although a sannyasi, he does not take interest in the study of Vedanta, but instead always engages in chanting and dancing in Sankirtan. So they're criticizing him. Because for them, sannyas means sitting and endlessly discussing the Vedanta and the commentary of various persons on the Vedanta Sutra. Although the Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, and it's full of nectar. And it is already given by Srila Vyasadeva. But they have this other commentary, and they just go on and on and on discussing this dry thing. And he's saying, he's dancing, sannyasis shouldn't dance. And he's chanting, sannyasis shouldn't chant. They should simply read and talk about things. All right. So the natural commentary on the Brahma Sutra, or the Vedanta Sutra, is the Srimad Bhagavatam that was given already by Srila Vyasadeva. So there's no reason to discuss any other commentary, especially Shankaracharya's commentary, which absolutely contradicts the Vedanta Sutra itself. Any questions about any of that? Murka sannyasi nija dharma nahi jane, bhavu kahaya pere, bhavu kerashane. This Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an illiterate sannyasi and therefore does not know his real function. Guided only by his sentiments, he wanders about in the company of other sentimentalists. They really criticize the Lord. Harivol. Shaba shuniya prabhuha shemane mane, upeksha kariya karuna kaila sambhashane. Hearing all this blasphemy, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu merely smiled to himself, rejected all these accusations, and did not talk with the Mayavadis. He said, okay, do what you like. Upeksha kariya kaila mathura gamana, mathura dekhiya puna kaila agamana. Thus neglecting the blasphemy of the Varanasi Mayavadis, Lord Chaitanya proceeded to Mathura. And after visiting Mathura, he returned to meet the situation. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not talk with the Mayavadi philosophers when he first visited Varanasi, but he returned there from Mathura to convince them about the real purpose of the Vedanta. So, these guys are scholars. They know the Vedanta, they know they know the verses of the Vedanta, but because they're influenced by a misinterpretation of Vedanta, given on purpose by Shankaracharya, who knows better, by the way. He just gave them some junk to think about. And then so when Mahaprabhu defeated them, it's not like they didn't know those verses. But he showed them, your understanding of the meaning of these verses is wrong, and he showed them that. Just by common sense. And then they were all converted, very strongly converted. Kashite Lekha Shudra Sri Chandrasekhara Taragare Rahila Prabhu Svatantra Ishwara. This time Lord Chaitanya stayed at the house of Chandrasekhar, although he was regarded as a Shudra or a Kayasta, for the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is completely independent. So Lord Chaitanya stayed at the house of Chandrasekhar, a clerk, although a sannyasi is not supposed to reside in a Sudra's house. 500 years ago, especially in Bengal, it was a system that persons who were born in families of Brahmins were accepted as Brahmins, and all those who took birth in other families, even the higher castes, namely the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, were considered Shudra non-Brahmins. Therefore, although Sri Chandrasekhar was a clerk from the Kayasta family in Upper India, he was considered a Shudra. Similarly, Vaishyas, especially those of the Suvarnavanik community, were accepted as Sudras in Bengal, And even the Vaidyas, who were generally physicians, were also considered Sudras, or non-Brahmins. So the kind of two Varnas, Brahmins and the rest of them. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not accept this artificial principle, which was introduced in society by self-interested men, and later the Kayasas, Vaidyas, and Vaniks all began to accept the sacred thread despite objections from the so-called Brahmins. But this was all bogus. Oh, it's nothing following any regulation or of any scripture. So they just made that up in order to set themselves above all others in an artificial way. But Mahaprabhu completely ignored all of that. He's the one who's the source of all the scriptures that describe the Varnashram system. So Srila Prabhupada is telling a little bit of the history of this type of these social dilemmas, I suppose you could say, that had developed as the caste system. Very interesting, a little bit of history here. There are many Vaishnava families in Bengal whose members, although not actually born Brahmins, act as acharyas by initiating disciples and offering the sacred thread as enjoined in the Vaishnava Tantra. For example, in the families of Thakur Raghunandan Acharya, Thakur Krishnadas, Navanihoda, and Rasikananda Dev, a disciple of Shamananda Prabhu, the sacred thread ceremony is performed as it is for the caste Goswamis, and this system has continued for the past 300 or 400 years. Accepting disciples born in Brahmin families, they are bona fide spiritual masters who have the facility to worship the Shaligram Shila, which is worshipped with the deity. As of this writing, Shaligram Shila worship has not yet been introduced in our Krishna consciousness movement, but soon it will be introduced in all of our temples as an essential function of Archan Marg, or deity worship. Anyway, that was just a little bit of... And Srila Saraswati Thakur established this very, very strongly, that the family you're born in has no consideration whatsoever in your becoming qualified as a Vaishnava, and a Vaishnava is automatically above a Brahmin. But of course that has to be bona fide. Not that we can just do all of our Sudra nonsense and act in a very low way and call ourselves Vaishnavas who are above Brahmins. But Srila Saraswati Thakur established from the authority of the scripture and the previous acharyas and Mahaprabhu himself that it doesn't matter who one is in terms of his birth. It has no bearing whatsoever. If that person is by nature, his nature is becoming a Vaishnava, then automatically, of course, he's automatically able to worship the deity because he has faith and devotion for the deity. And his lifestyle is very clean also. That is very important. And Srila Prabhupada spent a lot of time and energy establishing that type of lifestyle for us. And of course that was taken for granted. It's taken for granted that anyone who calls himself a Vaishnava is at least a Brahmin in behavior, in terms of his cleanliness, truthfulness, and so many things. If he's inclined to worship the deity. But further than that, there are many histories of those who became Vaishnavas and who were from all different kinds of backgrounds, even thieves and so many things. But that's a different kind of thing. But in the general preaching, There's no hindrance to anyone. Haribo. So we'll continue from here tomorrow. Any questions about anything we've read today?
No. Yes.
So we are learning the stories.
Oh, sorry, what was that?
So we are learning the stories. Yes, how the how was relationship, yes, between disciples, for example, and a master would be in the past. But what is thoughts came to my mind, that stories was according to that time, that mood, that environment.
Mm-hmm. Which story?
Just general, in a book. We are reading the book about the stories long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And we are learning the books just to know how it should be, for example. But maybe should we add some contemporary context to understand and to understand better how we can apply in our life, how it could be for us, how it could be better for us to apply in our content.
Oh, I see. I mean, the story of Srila Prabhupada will be perfect for that. And Guru Maharaj, all the history of our acharyas and their dealings with their disciples, their teachings, and how to apply the principles that are given by Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis and their followers. They are applicable also in our present life because those principles are eternal.
I understand. Principles are eternal, but the content constantly changing. And it would be better to understand how to apply just for now, for us, what is influences changing type of knowledge, type of relationship, type of...
I mean, the same principle is there, really. In the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing about the Lord, hearing from the scriptures like we do every day, Kirtan, sharing that with others, chanting Harinam, and leading a clean life, and then whatever else we have to do that in a mood of surrender, to see that the Lord is arranging circumstances for us, for our own purification, and trying to bow down to those lessons, and going on in that way. That's applicable. It's just applicable. I mean, how we are trying to live now. Those teachings are coming fresh from the acharyas, according to time and circumstance. Especially Srila Prabhupada established all these things in the West, according to some time and circumstance, making an adjustment. Especially in those days, all the devotees lived in temples. It was only later that devotees established their own grihastha ashrams, established their own houses, and lived separately from the temples. At first, every devotee who became initiated lived in the temple. And we lived that really regulated life, really nice life, very busy all the time. And then we took that to our grihastha ashrams and raised our children, and the children had to go to school and many, many things. And to keep that Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam very, very, very much prominent and alive in the grihastha ashram. And all those things can be applied. we have to make some effort. Srila Gurudev one morning, he said, it's not that the lion goes out and opens his mouth and waits for something to crawl into his mouth and die, so he has his dinner, so he has his food. He has to hunt. He said, so we must make some effort in Krishna consciousness. We can't just give in to all weaknesses and call that adjustment. Because whatever adjustment has to be made, it has to be made with strength. That this adjustment is going to help me in my spiritual progress. It's going to help me in my faith, in my remembrance, in my service, and in my attempt for surrender. So we're accepting what is favorable for that. And in order to do that, requires some discipline and also some understandings, a deep platform of understanding of what it is we're practicing and why. All these things have to be understood properly. So some effort is always there, but that process is readily available. All those things are available. And the practice, the association, everything is there, but we have to put our own effort into it. That is, in order to come to the Lord's mercy, we also must reach out and accept that mercy. It's a reciprocal thing. Not that I'm just going to lie there and wait for something to happen, you know. So that is the process in the modern time. And then when there's something that comes up that's a little bit, oh, how do I manage this? Then there are senior devotees, someone maybe you see that you really admire and trust, you can ask them, and you can ask the Acharya, your guru, you can ask these questions in order to make some adjustment in any particular circumstance. But the general thing is there, definitely. It is actually the same, but it just is some little difference in environment, some adjustments made. But that adjustment is also part of the process, as we've seen over time in the history of the Acharyas. So some little bit of change in terms of preaching. But the main thrust is always Sharanagati and faith, association. Don't eat food. That's a very big thing. We don't eat food. We offer everything that we eat. Otherwise there's an entanglement. Krishna says, if you eat food grains not offered to the Lord, you eat only sin. And sin is the source of our entanglement. Somebody was saying, oh, it doesn't, I know that I'm going to do something sinful, I'm just ready to accept the reaction for that. That reaction is very heavy. It's not something that we should do. We should avoid all those things which are going to entangle us. So all these things are principles that can be applied pretty much in every circumstance, and do the best we can under those circumstances.
May I just make a comment? Maybe I meant more intellectual aspect about when people interact. For example, you give example about how Mahaprabhu give
took sannyas.
Took some, teach some sannyas and teach other people who, in a context of varnashrama.
Yeah.
Now we are just seems out of varnashrama, but maybe in, but not Indian. Yes, maybe some Western type. Right? What would you think? Maybe we could add some contemporary examples how it happens for now. For example, Mahaprabhu gives that, but it can be here. For example, do you remember I tell you about that. Is there any?
I think you can find those examples in all the temples.
Yes.
I mean, all the temples are making adjustments.
It's like a fresh example, and it's connected to us, and we could better understand.
But are you not practicing Krishna consciousness? And so you already have your own example.
I'm telling not about only me.
But others also are doing what you're doing. They're going to temples. They're trying to learn Siddhanta properly and apply the principles of that Siddhanta in whatever life they have to lead. That is really what's happening all over the world.
What I mean,
Maybe you should come up with that example.
Okay.
If you come up with that example, then I can understand what you mean. Because this is happening all over the world now. It is contemporary. It is, circumstances are, like according to different countries even, there are going to be slightly different examples given of preaching because then it's something that they can relate to. But I've spoken to people all over the world, Chinese people, Thai people, different kinds of people, and everyone understands one thing. We have a person within our heart who loves us very much, and he wants good for us, and he's trying to teach us how to live, to come to him, and he is in everyone's heart, and he loves everyone. Everyone can understand this, and try to search for him by calling his name. This is so simple, and it's just true. So you can understand, like you can adjust something according to the capacity, to the philosophical capacity or the capacity for abstract thought in different kinds of people. But it's actually very simple. And I'm always, for example, I can just say me because that's my only experience of teaching children from the age of 3 and 4 about Krishna consciousness. It's not hard. They understand things because it's very natural. It's not like teaching an unnatural thing that you just have to, cram into your head. It's a natural thing to understand Krishna consciousness. And so it's not that difficult. We have our... the temples are important because they're places where people can congregate and hear about this and see a very good example and feel a very good atmosphere of spiritually centered life. It's very uplifting for people. It's very uplifting for me to come to the temple every day. And so we have the temples, we have some standard that we keep here in order to keep the sanctity of that. And give shelter to people who, many people will go off and do many, many things, and then they come back and they feel, relief, because it's full of transcendental sound, and we don't want to compromise that. The temples are places of very great relief and shelter for people. So this is the modern time, but the message is eternal, and the lifestyle, although different from India, the lifestyle is still very clean and pure. A clean and pure lifestyle to give, us some shelter. Do the great devotees have to live according to principles of religion? No. They can sell fish. It doesn't make any difference. But those things are very important for us to have some good structure and keep the mind in a safe position for making spiritual progress. All these principles are eternal, and to apply them is not so difficult in different places, and there's some small detail of difference, but the essential things are the same. And we have that example that Srila Prabhupada is telling us right now, that he had to make adjustment when he came to the Western world. But without compromising the deep principles, none of that was compromised at all. He didn't allow boys and girls to do rotten things in the temples, never. But he made sure that they could all live there, and if they wanted to, they would marry and engage in Krishna consciousness, Grihastha life, in the ashram of Grihastha ashram. So he made that adjustment to allow the girls to live in the temples, which in India, the girls live with their families until they're married. Maybe now not. But in those days, absolutely. But that's not the way we are in the West. But he didn't compromise any principle of divine life to let the ladies live in the temple. There's nothing against that. It's just that the social rules and regulations, he compromised in those, but nothing in a deep way. And so we can go on without compromising anything in terms of what is Siddhanta, but just make some application, a little bit of variety. Right now the temples are not like they were in Prabhupada's time. It takes a really strong leader to make a temple like that. And people are not as strong. So, I mean, they can be, but the atmosphere is very self-indulgent, more even than it was in when I was young. So, our emphasis is more on Siddhanta, on preaching and offering everything, making everything clean and purify in the temple, everything very nice, good standard, and a place and a shelter for people to come and to try to adopt those measures in their own lives. That's what it is. And we have many stories because we have our acharyas who applied everything according. Srila Saraswati Thakur was a great revolutionary. I mean, people wanted to kill him. The caste Brahmins, he was blowing up their world because it was based on nothing but pride. And he didn't want that. That is against the principles of Vaishnavism. So he just blew them away. There are many stories about this. He broke many, many rules that were the external rules of the time in order to establish the internal reality. And Krishna did it in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna's given all these principles of Dharma, and then he says, forget all that Dharma. That Dharma is coming from me. And I say, forget about it. Sarvadharmam prityaja mamekam sharanam. Only me. You just surrender to me, and I will take care of you. That's a revolutionary statement by the Supreme Lord who gave the Veda, and he is saying, throw away all that. Because deeper, the Veda is for me.
Like
Vede sadarve, Vede ahameva Vejaya. I am to be known by the Veda. If you study the Veda and you don't know me, you haven't learned anything. So many things. Because society tends to become rigid, because that's something we can control. We want everything to be in a box which is controllable by me. To approach the Lord means I have no control. My only control is that I'm approaching him. But he's the Lord, and he can do anything he wants. Anything. He's playful and beautiful and reckless and whimsical. And everything he does is the absolute reality and full of goodness and beauty. We are trying to approach that Lord, not the constitutional kingship of God. We're approaching Krishna. So that requires full surrender under all circumstances. Getting cut off in traffic. Suddenly, somebody may get very enraged by that. My Lord, you sent that car. Let me bow down to you. All these things, surrender is the overarching solution to every problem in spiritual life. So we're going to, apply all of that. Maybe some little adjustment externally, but the internal thing, that will always be there. It's always there because it's eternal. It is our natural relationship with the Lord. But the temples are important. They're important. People have to have a place to come and hear and speak about these things, take prasadam, and be reminded Mahaprabhu is here giving some seva. They're very important. They're shelters for so many people. So we're going on like that and trying to give our whatever we can to these things, as far as our whatever is possible by us. This is the second day we didn't read Upadesamrta. Jaya Saparikashi Shri Guru Gaura Chandra Jai Giri Raju Ki Jai. So we can read a little bit since the offering has just gone on. Today's Ekadasi, a nice Ekadasi. Boga. What is not offered to the Lord is called boga. Do you know what the word boga means? Boga means enjoyment. And Krishna is the only enjoyer. So we are taking prasadam. He is the only enjoyer. That is a fact. There's one enjoyer, and all others are his servants. And we're hearing this even about Advaita Prabhu, who is Vishnu Tattva. He wants to serve and feel the sweetness of serving the Lord. So we don't eat boga. That is sinful. What is the good to any living being that I am eating it? It's only violent. But if I offer that, then the whole environment around that vegetable, for example, the gardener, the seed maker, the person who's bringing it to the market, the person who's selling it, the person who's buying it, cooking it, offering it, and eating it afterwards, all are benefited. But me eating, it's only sinful. You died, I eat you. That's it. Nothing good. So these principles are eternal. They're always there. They're there under all circumstances eternally. Hare Krishna. So now this offering is there. And any other question? I guess we'll just continue with this beautiful article from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur tomorrow. Anyway, we're on the bottom of page 438, so we'll just read a little bit. Jai Srila Rupa Goswami ki, Jai Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Jai Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga ki, Jai. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmanivedanam. These are the 9 processes of devotional service that are still applicable under all circumstances, right? Hearing of Vishnu, chanting of him, remembering him, attending his feet, worshipping him, bowing down to him, serving him, being his friend, and surrendering oneself to him. A conditioned jiva, bodily, mentally, and verbally applying earnest attention to Sri Krishna's feet, is called bhakti. Bhakti's distinction from karma and jnana is very subtle. In many cases, the limbs of bhakti and the limbs of karma are the same. Good karma meaning I'm going to follow the principles of a good life. And the devotees are also doing that, but the reason is very different. When these limbs are connecting with fleeting desires, they are the limbs of karma. When they are connected with the dry thoughts of Brahma, then they can be called limbs of Gyan. In some limbs, there is neither karma or any Gyan. Action, the result of which is only subservience to Krishna, is a limb of bhakti. Action, the result of which is only selfish enjoyment, is called karma. Karma, the purpose of which is sayuja mukti, is Brahma Gyan. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami has said of the characteristics of bhakti, Anya bilasita shunyam jnana karma jnanavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhakti ruttama. Pure bhakti is constant endeavor for Krishna with the intent of pleasing him. So why are we chanting? To please him. Why are we purifying our hearts? For him. Then it becomes bhakti. Otherwise it can be karma. Pure bhakti is constant endeavor for Krishna with the intent of pleasing him that is free from desirousness, anyabhilasita, of anything else, and unobstructed by inquiry into impersonal Brahma, which is Gyan, and observance of conventional rites, karma, and so on. Jnana karma jnanavitam. Any question about that statement? Bhakti, the limbs of which are practiced under obligation to rule, vidhi, is called Vaida Sadhana Bhakti. So these rules, these regulations of our life, are called Vaida Sadhana Bhakti. Service activities that are performed out of deep attachment, anurag, to Krishna, are called Raga Bhakti. The bhakti of the residents of Braja is called Ragatmika, or constituted of raga, which means deep, spontaneous attraction. And following them in such activities of bhakti is called Raganuga Bhakti. When Vaidhi Bhakti, starting from Shraddha, is able to reach Rati, or Bhava Bhakti, then it becomes one with Raganuga Bhakti. So there are stages of devotion. And when one comes to the position of Bhava Bhakti, or loving devotion, then it is called Ragatmika Bhakti. But not before that. Before that, the rules and regulations are very important for us. They'll keep us in a safe position while we are trying to practice devotional practices, and it's always with Sharanagati in the center. Then it becomes one with Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti is always the strongest. This is the 9th principle, or Atmanivedana. The 10th, the 9th, sorry. The 10th principle, according to the statements of Amnai, is that prema is the goal, prayojan. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and we can come to this 10th principle tomorrow. Jaya Shri Upadesamrita ki Jaya, Srila Rupa Goswami ki Jaya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki Jaya. So that's why when we're in the temple, we rise early in the morning, we engage in the worship of the deity, we bathe ourselves, we put on tilak in 12 places, and we follow the principles of service and hearing. It's extremely important to attend the classes and to hear the principles of bhakti. Haribo. Hari Jaya Saparikasi Shri Guru Chandraju ki Jai. Jai Shri Guru Chandraju ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramhamsa Pari Brajakacharya Astatar Siddha Shri Shriman Srila Bhakti Sundar Vrindadev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhamsa Pari Brajakacharya Astatar Siddha Shri Shriman Srila Bhakti Rakak Sri Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Sagoswami Prabhu ki Jai. Saparshad Shriman Mahaprabhu ki Jai. Saparshad Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Jai Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mission ki Jai. Kol Kartal ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Samaveda Vaishnava Mandala ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari. Jai Gurudev ki Jai. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev devotees ki Jai.
Shri Chaitanya Nityananda.